I think that Kevin really screwed things up last week when he decided to inject himself into this controversy with his vociferous defense that contained some rather charged language. I think he's doing the right thing by pointing out the obvious, which is that if somebody glosses Nazis on the air, that person probably should not be associated with a conservative think tank, and that everyone should have a duty to say that that is a bad thing to do. So I'm grateful to Kevin for doing that. I think it's a very good thing that he did that. The real issue here is I think that Tucker Carlson's morphing from, I would say, a very edgy right-wing political figure on Fox News, but certainly within the mainstream, into a conspiracist, a person who ideologically launders anti-Semitism, who ideologically launders all sorts of anti-Americanism on his show, and then airs it for the public to hear with interviews like the ones he did with Nick Fuentes, which was essentially a massage of Nick Fuentes. You know, I think that took a lot of people by surprise, probably including Kevin.
Hello, welcome to a new edition of the Right Wing Populist Podcast. I am the Right Wing Populist. So today I want to talk about Ben Shapiro and why he sucks. Okay? You know, there's all this controversy involving Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, and little Ben Shapiro has decided to make this story about him, to some degree at least. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about sort of Ben Shapiro and his relation to Maga, the Maga movement, and his relationship to Trump, and, you know, why a lot of young conservatives used to be a fan of his, but why he's no longer as culturally relevant as he once was. It's sort of interesting, and it's relevant in regards to why, you know, there's all this controversy regarding Nick Fuentes and Tucker Carlson. But before we get into that, please remember to subscribe, whether it's on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. I super duper appreciate it. It is super helpful, and yeah, thanks for subscribing. So, anyone who follows politics to some degree has probably heard of Ben Shapiro. He created the conservative outlet called the Daily Wire. It's been around for about 10 years. But a lot of people don't remember is Ben Shapiro was an original never Trumper. Sort of hard to think about because people think of him today as like a big Trump defender. You know, someone who, you know, was supportive of Trump this past election. He endorsed Trump. But in 2016, he wasn't. He was a never Trumper. He was one of these people saying that not only would Trump lose, but you shouldn't even vote for him even as a conservative. Okay. He was part of the whole like Mark Levin National Review crowd. National Review was a very popular, still I guess popular quote unquote conservative outlet that had a big front page like thing with a bunch of like conservative commentators signed off on it saying, "Never Trump, we can't support Trump," back in 2016. And the reason why Trump back then offended many of these neocons like Ben Shapiro was because Trump ran as a non-interventionist. He ran on ending the forever wars and being America first, meaning that U.S., you know, should act in our interest and on the interest for other countries. Well, obviously that's unacceptable to the neocons like Ben Shapiro because neocons, generally speaking, care more about Israel than they do than the United States. I mean, that's the reality. And that's a big reason why Ben was a never Trumper. And, you know, Trump gets elected, though, in a surprising fashion. And, you know, Ben was running a, you know, conservative podcast. So he sort of had to pretend to be a Trump supporter. But Trump was a very pro-Israel president during his first term. So I do think Ben's shift towards Trump was at least in part genuine. Because Trump was a very pro-Israel president, probably the most pro-Israeli president we've had in decades, and maybe ever, in the United States. He recognized the capital of Israel in Jerusalem, I believe. You know, he basically gave Israel whatever they wanted. He actually moved the U.S. capital to Jerusalem, which was a big deal. And Ben, you know, lost his mind over that. It was like, you know, it was like Ben had lost his virginity. He was so excited when Trump announced he was recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. It was kind of crazy. You could look it up. You know, he had Nikki Haley as like the ambassador to the UN, and she would routinely rip the UN for not being pro-Israel enough. Trump ripped up the Iranian nuclear deal during his first term, which Israel wanted, because Israel hasn't wanted a diplomatic solution to Iran because Israel wants regime change in Iran. And the Iran nuclear deal prevented that from happening effectively. So Trump was a very pro-Israeli president, a very pro-Israel president during his first term. Even still, though, when Trump was running again in 2024, little Ben Shapiro wasn't even a Trump backer at first. He was a Ron DeSantis backer at first. That faggot. Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida. And Ben Shapiro, supported Ron DeSantis over Trump at the beginning of the Republican primary. So his anti-Trump, roots have always been there. They're still there. But he has to, pretend to be, MAGA so he can still remain relevant. So the Daily Wire can still remain relevant. But, I gave all that backstory so you can understand what's happening now. So fast forward, Tucker Carlson has Nick Fuentes on his show. Tucker actually pushes back on Fuentes regarding Fuentes' views about Jews and racism to a certain degree, and Tucker makes it clear that we need to focus on universal values, and because every human's made by God, no human's better than one another, and that there's no such thing as blood guilt, which is why he opposes any form of bigotry, including anti-Semitism. Now, he did it in a calm way. He wasn't berating Fuentes during the interview, but he made it very clear his disagreements with Fuentes. But that wasn't good enough, because the pro-Israeli lobby is so decimated right now. They're so, desperate and, kind of going crazy, that if you don't berate, Nick Fuentes, that's not good enough. You have to call Fuentes a bad person, a bigot. You have to scream at him. And if you don't do that, that's not good enough. So Shapiro goes on to do a whole big podcast talking about why the Groypers are bad. And look, the Groypers are bad. Okay, man. We get it. You don't like Nick Fuentes. You tried to destroy, Fuentes' career before it even took off. You failed. Okay. Supposedly, this pro-free speech guy wanted to destroy the career of a young conservative back in 2018. It's a little bit hypocritical, let's be honest. And so Shapiro then goes on CNN to talk about how Tucker Carlson is basically become an anti-Semite, only because, let's be real, Tucker's been critical of Israel now. This idea that Ben Shapiro really cares about bigotry is ridiculous. First off, he tweeted out back in 2013 or 2012 about Ann Coulter. He said that he knew Ann Coulter is anti-Semitic, but because she's a supporter of Israel, he doesn't care. Okay, that sort of gives the game away. A lot of these pro-Israeli conservatives, they don't really care about bigotry. As long as you're pro-Israel, they don't care. If Nick Fuentes loved Israel and supported Israel, they wouldn't give a shit about Fuentes. They would support him. Randy Fine, a congressman, is someone who has talked about how it's great to kill Palestinian children. And he's someone who Ben Shapiro has associated with himself before. Ben Shapiro himself, he has said some things that people could say are bigoted. He once said this about Arabs. Let me pull it up because it's very telling. Ben Shapiro said back in 2010, he tweeted, "Israelis like to build, Arabs like to bomb crap and live in open sewage. This is not a difficult issue. Hashtag settlements rock." Okay, that's Ben Shapiro. That's a little bit bigoted, I would say. Shapiro also said, "A radical Muslim is one who wants to cut off your head. A moderate Muslim is one who wants a radical Muslim to cut off your head." Okay. This is some of the stuff that Ben Shapiro says. That's kind of bigoted towards Muslims, I would say. I don't know. That doesn't sound like someone who cares so much about bigotry, as long as the bigotry is not directed at Jews or Israel. Now, you could say this, Ben Shapiro said that when he was young in his 20s. It's Fuentes is in his 20s. He's 27 now, but he's still in his 20s. A lot of the more controversial things he said, he was in his early 20s. So it's these people, or John Podortz, or however you say his name, all these Jewish conservatives who are we have to get rid of all this bigotry in the right-wing movement. It's you guys don't care about bigotry. You just care about Israel. Like I said, even Shapiro said this about Ann Coulter. He didn't care that he thought she was really anti-Semitic. Because all he cared about is the fact that she was still supportive of Israel. Okay? Like, does anyone really believe that if Fuentes didn't talk about Israel or was supportive of Israel, then all this controversy wouldn't... Of course this controversy wouldn't be happening then. They're pissed off because Fuentes is a very charismatic, and Tucker Carlson now too. They're both very charismatic and effective, and they've probably convinced the majority of young conservatives, particularly men, but young conservatives in general, that there's really no good reason that we're so supportive of Israel. It is sort of like a toxic relationship. It's like when you have it's like if you have like a girlfriend who's like crazy and is always trying to talk to you 24/7, and it's like, just leave me alone. You have to like whip her with your belt just to get her to stop talking. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that to your girlfriend. Maybe if you ask her 3 times nicely and she still refuses, maybe you can use a belt. But only after 3 times. I'm kidding. I do not support domestic violence. I do not play in the NFL, folks. I do not support it. Domestic violence is bad. Okay, it's bad. I am not an NFL running back. I do not support domestic violence. But anyway, so you see, the point is, the pro-Israeli crowd, they're like losing their shit. They're even forcing like people who work at heritage foundations to go to like Shabbat dinners and shit. Just because like the head of the Heritage Foundation at first made a statement saying they weren't going to like cancel Tucker and that they love Tucker and that it's okay to criticize Israel. But then like the anti-Semitism organization, I forget the name of it, that like funds the Heritage Foundation, threatened to pull their funding if they didn't recant their statement supporting Tucker. And then they were like, you have to go to the Shabbat dinners. All your young interns, you must go to Shabbat. You must go to Shabbat. It's like, yeah, but I don't even like. I like bacon, bro. Like I like pepperoni pizza on Friday night. I'm sorry. I like meat with cheese. What can I say? I don't want to go to Shabbat. You must go to Shabbat. You must support Israel. Support Israel. You must bomb Iran. Anyway. They lost the plot. The pro-Zionists, they don't understand. This war, it's sort of like Ben Shapiro in 2016 when he didn't understand that the neocons had already lost and that America First was inevitable. The anti-Zionist movement is inevitable, folks. The young conservatives, they don't like Israel. Okay. It's like well known that like all the young staffers on Capitol Hill and like in the Republican Party, they're all groypers effectively. They're all big Fuentes supporters because they don't like Israel. And some of them might be anti-Semitic, which I do not support. I agree with Tucker. I'm against bigotry, because I do think it's evil. But I'm not a Zionist, and I think Israel lost its mind over the last 2 years and how it responded to October 7th. So that's the real reason Shapiro is going after Tucker, is because Tucker's turned a lot of conservatives away from Israel. Because Tucker has exposed that a lot of U.S., particularly hawkish foreign policy, is really meant to help Israel and not the United States. That's how we bombed Iran. It wasn't to help us. Iran's not a threat to us. Iran's going to fucking bomb Nebraska? It's like, I don't know. They're a threat to Israel and Israel's influence in the region. That's why Israel wants regime change. And look, Iran, they fund terrorism. I get it. And I don't support terrorism. But part of the reason there's terrorism is because Israel, has been occupying Gaza. And they've been doing illegal settlements everywhere. That's very offensive to the Arabs and the Arab nations, and you can understand why. These are illegal settlements, which Ben Shapiro has supported against international law. And I don't support terrorism, but when Gaza was like an open-air prison for the last nearly 20 years, you could understand why there's so much resentment in the Arab world towards Israel. And you just can't hide this anymore, man. So Ben Shapiro can go on CNN and bitch about Tucker Carlson, imply he's an anti-Semite. It's like, dude, no one cares. No one cares, dude. It's a shame because I used to be a big fan of Ben Shapiro. Back in high school, like I said, back in 2017, 2018, 2019. But one of the reasons I stopped listening to him, even before Israel became such a big issue, was I did start to notice with Ben that even though he was critical of left-wing identity politics, critical of people crying racism for political purposes, I started realizing Ben was doing the same thing except just for Judaism. he would call people anti-Semites if they didn't like Israel. And it's like, I thought we were against that. I thought we were against smearing people as bigots just because we disagree on a policy objective or a policy outcome. So, it's just a shame to see what's happened to Shapiro. He clearly cares more about Israel than the United States. And you can understand why. He's a very religious Jew, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But stop pretending like you're the real MAGA or like Tucker's a bigot because he interviewed Fuentes. He pushed back again. That's the thing. People who are criticizing Tucker for his interview with Fuentes, they clearly didn't watch it, a lot of them, or they're just lying. Tucker made it very clear he's against bigotry. And he made it in a very eloquent way, in a very calm way, explained why universal values are better and why blood guilt is evil. And blood guilt is sort of like the core idea of racism. And Tucker pretty much, broke down why racism is evil fundamentally, including anti-Semitism and all forms of bigotry. But because he didn't scream at Fuentes that he's a Nazi, oh, that wasn't good enough. It's just gross. The whole thing is gross. So, anyway, the Mark Levins of the world and the Ben Shapiros of the world, they don't get it. It's over, folks. No one likes Israel. Israel is done. Okay, we're done with Israel. We're done with the Zionists. The Zionists suck. Okay, if you're a Zionist, I think you suck. And, enjoy your Shabbat dinner, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, I just want to do a little bit of rant of Ben Shapiro. I'm just kind of I'm disappointed in him as a former fan. But look, he's just, he's lost the plot, bro. The Zionists, they don't get it. It's over, folks, for the Zionists. They may not know it, but no one's a Zionist now. People are sick of Israel. If we want America first, we can still be supportive of Israel in some capacity, but we have to really, change our relationship with Israel. It has to be way less dependent. They're way too dependent on us. We're way too subservient to them. We need to, rebalance the relationship. Okay? We need to rebalance it. So, anyway, that's my rant on Ben Shapiro. So, anyway. That's it for today, folks. I'll be back tomorrow with my weekly review of the week and all the politics that happened. It's a sort of a new type of podcast I'm doing, and so we'll see how that goes. I'm looking forward to it. Again, before I go, please remember to subscribe, whether it's on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. I really appreciate it, folks. I'll be back tomorrow.